Welcome to this video tutorial. This is the concluding topic of the beliefs in society, and the main part of beliefs in society we've been talking about religious beliefs, but they are not the only belief system. So you might get a question which is asking you about different types of beliefs, for example ideology and science. So a bit of an introduction. So although the religions may claim about what the world is or ought to be like, they're not the only belief system that aims to do this. For example, throughout sociology, we've talked about different political belief systems. So things like the new right will influence the government and how society should be run. And also science also claims to tell us about how the world is. So in other words, there are many different belief systems that make these things called knowledge claims, and they're claiming that they're giving us facts about how things are. And just to summarise then, a belief system is broadly defined as a framework of ideas through which an individual makes sense of the world. And what we can argue is that we've moved away through religion as being the main belief system that individuals use to make sense of the world, and it's been replaced by, especially in a postmodern world, multiple variations of belief systems that can be used to understand the world that we live in. Okay. So in this topic we'll focus on science as a belief system, and we'll use that to compare how that's different from other belief systems such as religion, and also how they might be similar. And we'll also discuss ideology and how that's used to understand belief systems as well. So firstly, science as a belief system. So what has replaced religion is science. And many sociologists see science as a product of the process of rationalisation. We saw that in the secularisation topic. And that began in the 16th century as a result of the Protestant Reformation. So many sociologists, these advances in scientific thought have acted to undermine religion and religious beliefs by changing the way we think in society and how we see the world. So the impact of science then is that it's had an enormous impact on society over the last few centuries. Its achievements in science and medicine have eradicated fatal diseases, your basics in daily life, transport, communications, work and leisure would be really unrecognisable to our recent ancestors due to the scientific and technological advancements. This has improved our standard of living and economic productivity greatly. So this success has led to a widespread faith in science, this belief that it can deliver the goods, and this has replaced religion as the main way of thinking. So although science has both good and bad effects, or good effects, these act to demonstrate its cognitive power. In other words, it enables us to explain, predict and control the world in which non-scientific belief systems cannot do. But the problem is science has created a manufactured risk. So for example, of how they are bad or damaging to society, we've got things like pollution, global warming, weapons of mass destruction. These are as much a product of science and technology as are spaceflight, wonder drugs and the internet. While science may have helped us protect us from natural dangers such as disease and famine, it has also created its own manufactured risks that increasingly threaten the planet. And we've looked at them in terms of green and global crime. Okay, so you should complete activity 1. So in that case then, why is science replaced religion? And it's the way that they are defined. So for example, science is defined as an open belief system. So why is science successful in explaining and controlling the world? Well, according to Sir Karl Popper, science is an open belief system where every scientist's theories is open to scrutiny, criticism and testing by others. Science is governed by this principle of falsification, and you need to add this to your booklet, meaning that scientists set out to try and falsify theories, deliberately seeking evidence that would disprove them. So scientific knowledge in that case is cumulative, and this allows our understanding of the world to grow. It builds on the achievements of previous scientists to develop a greater and greater understanding of the world around us. In Popper's view, the key thing about scientific knowledge is that it's not sacred or absolute truth. You wouldn't see science as claiming a monopoly of truth in the same way as religion would, because it can always be questioned, tested, perhaps shown to be false, and it changes over a period of time. So if Popper is correct then, this still leaves the question of why science has only grown so rapidly in the last few centuries. And Merton, the functionalist Merton, argues that science can only thrive as a major social institution if it receives the support from other institutions and values. So he argues that this first occurred in England as a result of the Protestant Reformation and the values and attitudes that supported that, especially the Puritanism, which is a form of Calvinism. The Puritans' this worldly calling and industriousness, hard work, the study of nature, led to an appreciation of God's work, and it encouraged them to experiment. It also stressed social welfare, and they were attracted to the fact that science could produce technological inventions to improve the condition of life. So this new institution of science received support from the economic and military institutions. Okay. So Merton argues, also like Popper, that science is an institution of organised social activity, and this needs an ethos and set of norms that make scientists act in a way which serve the purpose of increasing scientific knowledge. So there's a similarity that you can add to your booklet. And Merton argued, that there were 4 scientific norms. Firstly, communism. Scientific knowledge is not private, it is communal knowledge. So scientists must share it with the scientific community. Universalism. Whether scientific knowledge is judged as true or false is judged by a universal standard or an objective criteria that applies to everybody. Disinterestedness. Being committed to discovering knowledge for its own sake. Having to publish their findings make it harder for scientists to practice fraud, since others are always checking their claims. And lastly, organised scepticism. No knowledge claim is regarded as sacred. Everything is open to questioning, criticism and objective investigation. So this should allow you to give the similarities between Popper and Merton. They both stress the importance of having an ethos. They both argue that there's a set of norms which made them act in ways which meets the goal of scientific knowledge. They both agree on the idea of falsification, that science is open to criticisms, and they also argue that they are both arguing that it's cumulative, building on previous scientific knowledge. So in this respect, science appears to differ fundamentally from traditional religious beliefs. While scientific knowledge is provisional, open to challenge and potentially disprovable, religions claim to have a sacred, absolute knowledge of the truth held by God's divine authority, and if questioned in the past, they would have been accused of heresy. So its knowledge is literally sacred, and this means it cannot be challenged. And those that do so may be punished for their heresy. So this is why it's significant, activity 2, that it cannot be challenged, but it also means that the religious knowledge does not change. How could it, if it already holds the absolute truth? So unlike scientific knowledge, it is fixed and it does not grow. Robin Horton puts forward a similar argument. He distinguishes between open and closed belief systems. Like Popper, he sees science as an open belief system, one where knowledge is open to criticism and can be disproved, whereas religion, magic and other belief systems are closed. That is, they make knowledge claims that cannot be successfully overturned. Whenever its fundamental beliefs are threatened, a closed belief system has a number of devices or get-out clauses, next activity, and at least in the eye of the believers. Can you think of any get-out clauses that religions might use to justify their belief system, even though it's not scientifically proven? So these devices will vary from one belief system to another. One example is witchcraft beliefs, and Edward Evans Pritchard's classic anthropological study of the Azandi people in Sudan illustrates this idea of a self-reinforcing closed belief system. So, like I said, these are the Azandi in Sudan. So, like Westerners, the Azandi believe that natural events have natural causes. For example, a snake bit me because I accidentally stepped on it as I was walking down a path. Now, as a Westerner, we would say, oh, that was just by chance that we stepped on a snake. The Azandi don't believe in that. They will believe that I've walked down the same path 1,000 times before, I've never been bitten before, so why now? So he refers to this as a misfortune. Okay. So if anybody suffered a misfortune like this, stepping on a snake, they would blame it on a jealous neighbour performing witchcraft against them. Nobody wanted to be seen as being inconsiderate, so they didn't want to be risked to be accused. So in such cases, the injured party may make an accusation against the suspected witch, and the matter may be resolved by consulting the prince's magic poison oracle. Here, the prince's diviner will administer a potion called a benjay to a chicken, and at the same time asking the benjay whether the accused is the source of the witchcraft, and telling it to kill the chicken if the answer is yes. If the chicken dies, the sufferer can go and publicly demand witchcraft to stop. Now this usually ends the problem, because the Azandi regards witchcraft as a psychic power coming from a substance located in the witch's intestines, and it's believed possible that the witch is doing harm unintentionally and unconsciously. So this allowed the accused to proclaim their surprise and horror, to apologise and promise that there'll be no further bewitching. So Evans Pritchard argues that this type of belief system performs useful social functions. 1, it clears the air, it prevents grudges from festering, it encourages neighbours to behave considerately towards one another to reduce the risk of accusation. And also, it's a social control mechanism. It ensures conformity and cooperation. Okay. Now, as Evans Pritchard points out, this belief system is highly resistant to challenges. That is, it's a closed belief system and it cannot be overturned by evidence. For example, non-believers might argue, well, if the benjay killed the chicken without the diviner first addressing the potion, this would not be a decisive test, showing that the oracle doesn't work. But for the Azandi, such an outcome will just prove that it was not a good benjay. As Evans Pritchard would say, the very fact of the fowl dying proves to them it's just bad. And the test doesn't disprove the belief system in the eyes of the believers, instead it actually reinforces it. So the believers are trapped within their own idiom of belief or way of thinking. They accept the system's basic assumptions, such as the existence of witchcraft, so they cannot challenge it. So there's a further little bit of research that you can do to have a little bit of a look at this. Polanyi argues that all belief systems have these devices to sustain themselves in the face of apparently contradictory evidence, such as science, for example. Firstly, it's circularity. Each idea in the system is explained in terms of another idea within the system, and round it goes. Subsidiary explanations. If the oracle fails, it will be explained away due to the incorrect usage of the benjay. And denial of legitimacy to rivals. Belief system reject alternative worldviews by refusing to grant any legitimacy to the basic assumptions. Creationists reject outright the claim from the evolutionist knowledge, the claim that the world is 1 billion years old. So this ends the first part of this video tutorial. You'll need to click on part 2 to continue.